Hello and welcome to Nerdarchy, for nerds by nerds. I'm Nerdist Dave, and today I'm joined by Skeeter Green. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. I look very red. I think it's my background.
It might be reflecting off of the dome.
Yeah, God, I got a little drag. I should have shaped myself up for
Yeah,
the
yeah.
show.
There's some settings in Zoom that can like fix that right up, I think.
Zoom is the best and worst thing that has happened over the last 2 years.
Yeah. So if you would be so kind to introduce yourself and let people kind of know who you are and what you do.
My name is Skeeter Green. I have been my company. Wait a minute. You can see SGP. It's hard to do this backwards.
Yeah, yeah.
um, I've been in and around RPG publishing for 20 years. I started, my first published credit was for Bastion Press in like 2000 or 2001. Um, I was a part of Necromancer Games and Frog God Games for many, many years, doing content development, writing, editing, art direction. And 3 or 4 years ago, I came to a point that I wanted to see if I could publish on my own or if I needed that fantastic team to prop me up. So I started SGP and I put out Crypt of the Science Wizard. And lo and behold, I can publish a book with much help. Everybody on the credits page is much appreciated because I can
Yeah,
write,
it
but
does take a whole team. Like I've seen people that are like,
for
I'm doing
sure.
this all myself. Like they're doing the writing, the layout, the art. I'm like, that is the way of insanity.
Yeah, I've got a couple of buddies, Jim Wampler from Mud Puppy Games that we'll get to later on in the show here. He does 90% of the work himself for Scientific Barbarian, and
Yeah.
yeah, I can't do it. I'm not that level of talent.
Do you know? Are you familiar with Guy Slanders from How to Be a Great GM?
I've heard the name.
Yeah, yeah. So he's got a good sized YouTube channel, a fantastic advice channel. He's put out a couple books and he does all the art and all the writing. I'm like, and especially the last one is like they did like I think it was like 300K for the Kickstarter. I'm like, dude, you
Yeah,
just gotta hire a writer or hire artists, hire somebody.
yeah, that's
Don't
insane.
stop doing it yourself.
uh, Glenn Seal from Monkey Blood Games over in the UK. He writes and does all his art. He did all the art in Crypt of the Science Wizard,
Yeah,
and he's another one of those guys that just, yeah, I'll sit down and just do everything on the book, which irritates me.
yeah, yeah. Esper the Bard is another YouTuber that's doing that too. I think. One,
Yeah,
it's insane. Like no one deserves to have that much talent, right? And like contained in one human. For
but
these people
but
that
good
do
for
it.
them. Yeah, good
Yeah.
for them if they can pull it off. That's fantastic.
It seems unfair to the rest of us. Like I realize that I now understand why I'm not good at doing anything. It's because there's these individuals are like, hey, let's just pour everything into them, and then there was nothing left.
Right. It's like they kind of leech the creativity out of the rest of us and they
Yeah,
just
yeah,
consolidate it all in them. No, it's good to find those people though, because especially if you need to ask a question, if you bump up against something, say, hey,
yeah,
I have
yeah,
this question about this writing, but I also have this question about obscure layout. And they say, oh, I can help you with both.
yeah. I know how to do
It's
both.
like,
Yeah,
what?
they're like They're like living, breathing Swiss Army knives.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's good to have one or two friends like that, but don't have too many because you will feel kind of pathetic.
It'll give you a complex.
Yeah, why can't I do this?
You just end up sitting in the corner crying all the time.
Yeah,
Uh, as always, folks, down in the description, you can find links to find Skeeter across the interwebs and stalk in a good way, not the creepy way. So what do you have going on currently?
right now, we just finished up Gamehole Con 2021. Fantastic event. Alex Kammer and the entire team put on a great convention in Madison, and it was not, 4 degrees and 2 feet of snow. So that's always appreciated. For those of us on the West Coast that don't know what weather is. Um, so yeah, I got back last week and just have been writing Crypt of the Science Wizard level 2. I've been woefully behind on that because of some real life things. We had, a pandemic. So yeah,
What
I've been
is Crypt
dragging.
of the Science Wizard for those that don't know? I believe actually we had you and Zach on and talked about it before.
Yeah, Crypt of
I'm
the
starting to, or I'm experiencing deja vu.
It happens. I get it all the time. Crypt of the Science Wizard is my homage to the Tomb of Horrors. It is the first level of a multi-level site that is filled with tricks and traps and obstacles. The Science Wizard is this ancient evil boogeyman based largely off of Doctor Doom, kind of
Nice.
melding science and magic. And I originally wrote it for 5th edition and Swords and Wizardry. And then I discovered Dungeon Crawl Classics and Mutant Crawl Classics. So I created a version for that rule set as well. And really embracing mixing science, fantasy, really opened me up to some other possibilities. And before anybody, pulls back and says, "Oh, that's not for me," it's not anything that has not been done. If you've ever heard of the module Expedition to the Barrier Peaks, do you know exactly what I'm talking about in your science fantasy? So it's not Star Trek crash lands into Lord of the Rings or anything, really shoehorned like that. It's a fairly elegant mixture of both.
I want to say about 20 years or so ago, I was probably like a purist. And I was like, we do not mix these things together. And then I got bored, right, of doing the
Yeah.
same thing for a long time. And then next thing you know, I had undead goblins in steam powered armor. So
Well, and for the purists and the classic RPGers, when going through Crypt of the Science Wizard, these scientific aspects of it are not in your face. They are kind of explanations of why. In the forward of this, I call everything ultra science. So is it Arthur Clarke that said any advanced science is indistinguishable from magic? So I really embraced that and thought, oh, well, these really high tech things would appear like magic if you weren't a master physicist. So that's kind of the stuff in there. It's not when an effect happens, it's not hand waved away. Oh yeah, magic created this. I get into the explanation. Okay, this stuff is venting from some machinery on another level that will be described later, and describes it. So it's gotten a fairly good reception. People are like, hey, that's kind of clever.
R.A. Salvatore wrote a book a long time ago at this point called Echoes of the Fourth Magic. And this will be spoilers for anyone who hasn't read it, but I think the book's been out like 20 plus years.
I
And,
don't think
and
you
it
can
was,
spoil it now.
yeah, a submarine, like it's, a submarine full of, modern day people end up in this fantasy world. And then like, and it's, a fantasy world full of sorcery and magic. But like what happens is that what you discover as the book goes on is like, oh, they've experienced technology. And the fourth magic is technology. And also they hate it because it's really bad and does really bad things. And now that these people have brought it back, and they want to make sure that gets stopped. So it was kind of like the gist of the book. So there's, I mean, like it kind of lending to what you said. Anything that, towards that quote anyway, anything that is, advanced enough is indistinguishable from magic for us.
And I get inspired by a lot of movies. So, like I was watching Alien Covenant, and they that is a dungeon crawl. These people go to a location, it happens to be on another planet. They dig into the ground and they go through all of these HR Geiger um caves with all this weird shapes and all everything's super creepy, and you find out, oh, okay, we're inside a spaceship.
Yeah.
That it doesn't have to be so in your face it jars you out of your fantasy realm. And for the people who want to argue about that, fantasy means fantasy. It's
Yeah.
not it's not Middle European knights, and it's not dudes in spacesuits. It is whatever you want to mesh it into. And I know some people are still purists and don't like it, but give it a chance, please.
Yeah, like I said, like I was like all fantasy all the time for like the first 20 years of my life. And then I was just like, I felt burned out and I needed something else. And I started
Yeah.
exploring like more steampunk and, more science fiction and other things. And then that stuff inevitably starts creeping its way into my games because like
Right.
whatever's going on in my life generally ends up in my games.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Kind of the backstory of Crypt of the Science Wizard is there is a great big bad guy, Cursetti, the science wizard, and the setting of the world that they're on, it is the big bad throughout history. When great changes have happened to the setting, it's either directly or indirectly involved. So the characters are sent out into the desert where an artifact has been unearthed that may or may not be linked to Cursetti, and they have to, start searching for it and bring back proof that this location either has to do with him or does not. So it's an
So
investigation.
the first book is basically the level one, right, of this multi-level
Right. It's
facility.
getting there and exploring this, fairly standard Egyptianish tomb, and then you find out this is not a standard Egyptian tomb.
So so how many levels are there?
Well, that would ruin the surprise. In
Until you
this
stop making books.
in this section there are 3.
Okay.
And it's one of the quotes in the very beginning of the book in the introduction talks about layers of an onion.
Yeah.
So layers upon layers upon layers. The first 3 get you to, this is Crypt of the Science Wizard is chapter 1 of the Tales of the Black Tower. So the first 3 levels get you to the Black Tower, and then levels after that are inside the Black Tower. And then there will be extra chapters that are satellite locations, but there could be a lot of levels to this. And the way I have this broken up is each product is self-contained but can be added.
Okay.
Like
Because in my
like
mind, when you say level two, I was like, wait a minute. So do you like get to the end of it and there's just like a stair going down into darkness and it just ends?
well, in 3 years of convention play, when I've run this,
Yeah.
only one group has ever gotten to the area where you would potentially get to level 2. It's fairly well hidden. So a GM can nudge them along the right direction or slow them down so they don't get, you're not 2 hours into a game session and go, okay, well, there's no more.
Yeah, yeah.
That has yet to happen in my experience. Um, but yeah, it breaks at a door that allows you passage to level 2, and it's fairly ominous at that moment. So it's perfect. I incorporated in Crypt of the Science Wizard the convention play
Mhm.
of 4 to 6 hours. So I chunked it. There are breakpoints, and through play testing, it's worked out perfectly. There are good points to stop and then resume your session later. Like Crypt of the Science Wizard level 1 can be 3 sessions of 4 to 6 hours. And of course, depending on your players,
Yeah, they
you
can
know,
always drag something out longer and longer for sure.
yeah, I
Or
mean,
they can make it super fast.
I had one session of 4 hours where the characters went through 4 places out of 19.
Yeah.
So it depends how scared you make them, because this has the opportunity to get very atmospheric, and you can describe things in a terrifying fashion to where you do have the thief rogue looking for traps every 5 feet because they're terrified. And there are some obvious things in there where it looks like somebody came through this before you. And there are some clues what to do and what not to do.
How do you handle that in your games where if there's like a lot of traps, or players that want to search for a lot of traps? How do you handle it in your game so that it's still relevant but also doesn't just totally take up the whole session?
Um, Generally, if somebody gets in that mode right off the bat, I will either give them a note or take them aside and say, you don't have to do that. I'm not going to automatically screw you over. I'll give you a tip, or I will mention, hey, now might you see something that makes the hair on the back of your neck raise up? Because that's not fun for anybody if the trap finder is just dragging everything out. That's not cool, and that's not the intent. The intent, even in Tomb of Horrors, where every 3 inches there's something that's going to kill you. Um, the intent is not to take that much time searching for traps where the thief is the focus of the entire adventure. So if that becomes relevant, I'll give them a tip off that, yeah, man, it's been a long time since we've checked for traps, hasn't
Yeah.
it? Do one of those, and that's really that's a group specific thing. Although I do mention that in sidebars. The way I write, and this is kind of a thing that I picked up from my buddy Levi Combs from Planet X Games. He's also very cinema driven. So when I write a module, I want it to feel like a movie. I want you to be immersed, like you're actually in the entrance hallway to Raiders of the Lost Ark when they're trying to figure out how to jump over pits. And oh God, don't, put your hand in front of that shaft of light. All that stuff were things that I was thinking about when I wrote Crypt.
So I feel like games have gotten a lot more narrative than they were when I first started playing. Um,
For sure.
and I think you play some OSR games or
Yeah.
simpler system games. How is that kind of like opposed to how those games are run, or has it been adopted in that community as well?
That's also pretty individual. When I have run the games, especially for the OSR community, they've really enjoyed it when I have run it because I try to include everyone and get them immersed in the game so they feel like they're there. Now, if they want to run Crypt of the Science Wizard, they may hate that flavor text and
Yeah.
all the extraneous. Well, I don't want to know how much dust is in the air. It's like, okay, then don't use it. I would rather give a lot of information and let somebody parse through rather than give, the judges guild 2 lines to a room and then on the fly some GM is like, okay, so there's a lot happening in this room and now I have to make it interesting, so I have to be the creative thing. As a designer, you can't win with everybody,
Yeah.
and I'm not really trying to. I would rather provide a very visual, engaging description and then just let people drop parts out that aren't relevant for their campaign.
I feel like, more like the modern version of D&D. I'll just use that as an example because that's what I'm most familiar with. Compared to previous editions, test the characters where previous editions, the further back you go, it tested the players more.
Yeah, that's relevant. And there's also, I don't I don't want to set anybody off,
Yeah, yeah.
but there's also the GM versus players adversarial role. And I know that's currently in flavor again with John Peterson's book that came out. They talk about, you know, Gary Gygax had a very specific thought of how the role of a GM should be done, or DM should be done. Um, and I I go against that. I love Gary and Dave for giving us the game, but they didn't do it the way I would do it. I look at a game master as a coach. They're gonna push you and make you the best you can be as a player and a character. But I'm not out there to just kill your characters. I used to do that in OSR games. I mean, we would have a challenge in Frog God Games. By Saturday, how many characters have you killed? It's like, oh, I've killed 24. Oh, I've killed 27. I killed 32.
And it
As a
was very
GM,
very specific too. I'll just like preface this for people that aren't familiar with this style of game. Like I felt like the better GMs, and I've said it before, had this own like personal code of honor or rules that they followed that in their mind made it fair, right? Because let's face it, when you're playing these games as the GM or DM, there is nothing really to keep you from killing characters. That's fairly easy.
right?
You've got tons of ammunition. Actually, you have unlimited ammunition, and the players have limited resources. So so you can do it. But
Exactly.
the better GMs would were still adversarial, but they had these guidelines that they followed, and they may be the only ones that knew them, but they still had them.
Yeah. My measuring stick, if a game has gone well, is after everything is said and done. If I get a cheer from the table, or if I get people jump up and high five me because they
Yeah,
enjoyed the game, then I did my job right. That's I don't care if they win, they lose. Hey, that's a group of 6 people I'm going to see for 4 hours. And
yeah.
if they enjoyed that 4 hours, if that was their favorite time of a convention, I win. I don't care if they got all the treasure, they got no treasure, 6 of them died, whatever. If they enjoyed that time, then that makes me a winner.
Like I guess nowadays, and like I've kind of moved towards a style of GMing where back in the old days we were all kind of adversarial, and that's like just how we learned
Right.
to Doug runs our website, and a lot of our written content over there, but he articulated, like, I think the direction a lot of us have moved in our group anyway, to, like, as the GM, we're here to help the players facilitate the story that they want to try and tell, right? And we're there to throw up the roadblocks and give, create those moments of tension and drama, but at the end of the day, it's going to be their story to tell, and we're there to try and just like help facilitate it.
And I'm not at all suggesting that GM should let the characters do whatever they want. That's not it. I mean, from especially in Crypt of the Science Wizard, from room 2, I metaphorically have them pee in their pants every 5 feet in there. They are tense. Are their characters going to die? There are some spots where that absolutely can happen. And then, I have backup characters because they're close enough to the entrance. Yeah. Oh yeah. Okay. So your twin brother, who was the camp guy, is now running in. So people don't also lose the chance to play the game just because the dice rolls are bad or they make, a critically bad choice. I will absolutely fudge dice rolls. I rarely do it against the players, but I will if it me if they're rolling all 20s
Yeah.
through the beginning and it's so easy it's not even fun. I'll negate some rolls or be like, oh yeah, you can't roll, because of this reason you don't get to make a roll here. This thing just happens. And I do not think I have ever had anybody accuse me after a game of saying, well, you didn't GM that right, so I didn't enjoy this.
Yeah.
Nobody's done that.
Yeah,
I'm
and
sure
I
there are some
agree.
people that
Like,
would do it.
you're not there to like fulfill all the whims of your players.
No.
Like, it's with it's helping them tell a story within the framework of whatever the narrative that's set up. In the case where you're running a game at a convention or pre-written adventures, like there's already a constructed narrative that you're all working upon, and if they decide to play in this game, then they in theory agreed to, right? Like, so, like, showing up for Rime of the Frost Maiden with all your desert barbarians might not make a whole lot of sense.
Yeah,
And being
that's poor planning.
surprised. Yeah.
Yeah, I run with pre-gens when I do convention games, just
Yeah.
so people have an easier time, and they're pretty good pre-gens. These are not this is some farmer with a pitchfork, and now they're an adventurer. These are people who are farmers. They may have a pitchfork, but they're seasoned as well.
What is your
So
favorite con to run games at?
North Texas RPG Con. It happens in June. It's the first week of June. It's a very, for me at least, it's like if me and my junior high and high school buddies multiplied by about 100 times and all went to one hotel to have a convention. It is my family. I love, I'll say 80% of those people.
Yeah.
15% I don't know.
It really is like
5% I
family.
can't stand. Yeah. Yeah, it's like RPG Thanksgiving.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, you go there, you have a great time. It's very relaxed. The way the hotel is set up, you have tables in a lot of conference rooms, so it's quiet. You can deal with the environment better. It's just
It's not just a cacophony of like gaming table after gaming table.
Right. I
Yeah.
I am sympathetic with the people like at Gen Con that have to run a game in the giant, vast airplane hangar with,
Yeah.
10,000 other people. I totally get that. North Texas Con caps their attendance at like 350, 400 people. It's a very small, uh, intimate affair, which sounds wrong. But it's great. And running games, that's really nice. TotalCon up in Massachusetts in February is very similar to that. Smaller con, regional, smaller rooms, great. Gamehole is way bigger. That's 3 to 5,000 people, so that can be tough. I have been very fortunate. A lot of my games have also been in conference rooms or in smaller groupings, so it's a lot of fun. You get to see more people and a bigger variety of people. So
They do a pretty
yeah,
good job of breaking it up.
yeah, they really do. Gamehole Con is the most organized, smoothliest run convention I have gone to. The entire team that they have put together are just top shelf. Their volunteers want to be there. The administrators are competent. It's amazing. It's wonderful to watch.
Yeah, I've been to Gamehole Con once, the year before the plague shut down the world.
Yeah.
It was definitely a really good experience, and it was one of the few cons that I did more con-like stuff at than I normally do. Usually I just do a lot of networking and hanging out, and like I probably don't even show up to the floor of the convention itself until in the afternoon most of the times, like just before it's closing down. Like Gen Con took me like all 4 days to make it through the whole entire floor just
Oh man.
because.
Yeah. No, the last time I went to Gen Con, I went with my wife, and it was the 50th anniversary where they did the whole museum in Lucas Oil Stadium.
Yes,
So
that
you
was
got
my
to go
first one.
Oh yeah, you got to go through the timeline of all that stuff, and it was funny because right at the time we went to that Gen Con, I was thinking about dropping out of RPGs. I was burned out. I didn't want to do it anymore. I wasn't. It was before I started writing, and I was just done. And we
As a
went
designer, or
to
as a hobby, or both, everything.
as a designer. It's hard for me as a hobby because I don't really have a home group. So I play online because my friends are all on the East Coast,
Yeah.
Midwest, and all that. I don't have a local group. Um, but I was really burned out of especially the business side. I'm not doing this. This is bullshit. I can make more money scavenging change in the gutter. You know that
Yeah,
that
I'm gonna go
that
deliver packages for Amazon or something.
oh my God. Yeah, it's just that whole thing. And we went to the museum, and a lot of the pieces in the museum were donated from people that I know, some good friends of mine. This is their collections and these pieces. And I went all the way through the time, and I got towards the end, and I'm looking at this piece in there, and it's not registering what it is. And it was the metal cover for Bard's Gate that Zach and I just finished doing recently. And it was in there in the museum next to the brown boxes and the stuff that Gygax and Arneson did, and the first edition Call of Cthulhu stuff that Chaosium did, and Stefan Picorni's Dwarven Forge first things. And it really just landed on me that something that I worked on was now part of D&D history, and I was recharged. It blew my mind. I may have even had a tear.
Nice. Now,
So yeah.
in your company, in your writing, is your son involved? Did I see that someplace?
He
You laughed.
he
Why did you laugh?
he's 15.
Okay.
So he has
The next
these
Ben Barsh in the making.
he has these wild ideas
Uh-huh.
for stuff, and he'll tell me about them, and most of them involve superheroes.
Okay.
Superheroes and Legos are his jam right now. Um, but he'll tell me an idea. Dad, I've got this idea for this, super powered artificial intelligence that is actually in charge of the entire planet and does everything. And it's the behind the scenes bad guy, like five bad guys in the behind the curtain. And I'm like, all right, I'm taking notes. I am going to
Yeah.
steal that, and you are going to get credit. So
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, he's
It works in fantasy games too. AI, arcane intelligence.
yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of every time I write something, I hand it off to my wife, who is sort of a gamer, sort of not a gamer, to see if it makes sense.
Filthy
So,
casual.
yeah. So
I got family like that too. It's okay.
but if it's clear and my description of what I'm trying to get across, if she can pick it up, then that means my writing is good.
Yeah.
So and she's very, very into investigations. She watches all the detective shows. She will throw out these things. Well, what if, the characters were looking for X and Y, but actually combined it became Z and opened D? And I'm like, what the hell did you even just say? I
Yeah.
love it. So I tap into their brains a lot for ideas and bits and pieces. And frequently when I'm stumped on something, I'll tell them what the problem is, and both of them will just like, oh, well, why don't they do this? I'm like, how did you think of that? and it's perfect and it works.
Nice.
So yeah, that's yeah, and my son came up with some monster ideas that I've used, and yeah, I'm looking for those resources.
Yeah, yeah. 15, bit of a late bloomer. There's uh a friend of mine who does creature sculptures, and they're like,
Yeah.
but he does them like on taxidermy heads, so they're like huge,
Oh wow.
like the
Yeah.
size, like deer heads and stuff like that. And the way that started was like his son would look at the monster manual and and then came up with ideas for monsters and then would describe them, and then Brian would like sketch them, and then if his son gave him the thumbs up, he would then like sculpt them. And like so like I ran into him at my first Origins, and like there's this big like sixth eye blue and green
Yeah.
black head sticking out into the aisle. I'm like, what is that? And it's like, its head is bigger than mine. So
Yeah, it's this thing that
yeah,
he
yeah.
thought of. Yeah. I don't act or think like I'm the greatest game designer to ever walk. I will never be that guy because it's not me. I don't have the drive to do it, but I love grabbing little ideas from other people and just pushing them a little bit, making them like if I get a seed idea from my son or my wife and I can develop that into a bigger evil plant, that's the best thing I can think of. I always thought somewhere in RPGs there should be a superstar producer like they have in music.
Yeah.
Some guy like, I got this idea, but I just need to get it over the top. And I'd be like, I know exactly what you need.
I think you
You know,
almost got the
if,
look for it too, man. You
oh
just need like
God,
a
that
sequin jacket or something.
oh yeah. No, Halloween, we got some yesterday, man. I am set with the sequins. My wife is the glitter queen.
Oh, nice.
She loves that stuff. Yeah, that would be great. Sequin top hat, pimp cane, all the whole 9 yards. I
So
think that would be great.
there's a question in the chat. Brian wants to know your thoughts on designing content that is enjoyable for a viewer to be run on streams. Seems like a growing market way to play. Do you watch any streams? Are you into streams at all?
I don't have a lot of time to do it just because I have a full-time day job. This is shocking. game design is not my job. Game
What?
design is my hobby.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I think there are a lot of people, and I'm going to throw the OSR under the bus. There are a lot of OSR, grognards that think streaming is just ruining D&D and that's not their game and it should be a different game. I cannot think of anything that is cooler. When I was 10 years old, really getting into D&D, if somebody would have told me you can watch D&D on TV, my head would have exploded. It was so fascinating that D&D had a cartoon. I almost couldn't get over that. But now having, you know, Satine Phoenix is my go-to for streaming content. She is amazing. Her and Jameson, we got to interview them and talk to them about it a little bit. They do destination games and they stream that stuff, and it's wonderful. And it has allowed people who weren't sure if D&D was for them to see it. And of course, the whole Critical Role team, and that's a real firebrand in RPGs and the edition wars, whether
Yeah.
they're good for D&D or not. If Critical Role has brought one person into D&D, it's totally worth it.
I suspect
Totally
they might
worth
have
it.
brought in a few more than that, though.
Few million. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I think that stuff is great because it's a new avenue to bring people into the game, which is only going to make the game better. Uh, if if you think that modern games are not for you, don't play them. There's literally tons, physical tons of content for you to go through from the old TSR days or all of that stuff. Play the game you like. It's pizza. We talked
Yeah. I
about this
mean,
earlier, man.
a better approach for the OSR would be to just like play the games you like and stream those. To show that your point of view, to show like, oh, this is how I think it should be played, or how I, maybe not how I think it should be played, but how I enjoy playing it, so other people can be exposed to different ways of enjoying the game.
I was in a game that was done virtually, and it was run by Matt Finch, who wrote Swords and Wizardry, co-wrote Osric, and it was a 3D printed dungeon with miniatures and a little tiny camera
Yeah.
giving us the miniatures perspective as we were going through the dungeon. And that's about as old school as you could get. And
That is pretty cool.
it was great fun. I'm thinking about doing it. You guys can't hear it, but I'm actually 3D printing level 2 of Crypt of the Science Wizard, and I'm going to get a little tiny camera and I'm
Yeah,
going to run through it
and
so
do a
people
virtual
can,
tour.
yeah, virtual tour of Crypt of the Science Wizard. And I guess I just don't understand the hate on for people for modern games. If you feel so strongly about fifth edition is not your game, you better also be driving in a horse and buggy, because if you have a modern car, you're
Yeah.
not opposed to things evolving.
Yeah, I mean that is so bizarre about almost anything, right? When people are like against progress for progress's sake. I mean, just for the sake of things of the past. That's like you said, we don't use a horse and buggy anymore, and no one is lamenting the loss of those jobs, right?
Right. I mean, and I get it. I mean, I have a preferred D&D version myself. Um, there are a couple of guys at North Texas RPG Con that run advanced Dungeons and Dragons games, um, John and Alan. And if they have an opening in their games, I will do almost anything to get into those games because they are amazing. And they take me back to when I was a preteen and teenager. And it's like my joints don't hurt anymore. I'm happy. I am full of joy. The oppression of the world is not on me, you know.
Yeah.
So I get the having a um preferred rule set, but just randomly, you know, shanking new players because, oh, you like 5D, you don't know what D&D is. Get off my lawn. You know,
Yeah.
that is not helpful.
No,
It's
no,
it's
it's
just
not.
not.
So Doug and Ted, my partners, both they're both big Critical Role fans, and they like watching the show and other streams as well. I'm a fan of streaming. I don't enjoy streaming. Like I like playing in games that are streamed, but watching it, I don't know. It's like if there's a sports game going on and someone's like, "Do you want to watch this?" I'll be like, "Nah, that's cool. I'm gonna go do something else." But if they're like, "Do you want to play?" I'd be like, "Oh yeah, that would be fun." But
Oh, for
whatever.
sure. And
Um,
and when I say streaming is super cool, I also said I don't have a lot of time for it.
yeah,
If streaming was a big thing for me, for sure, I would make the time to watch it. I mean, my son has YouTubers that he follows, so he's on his phone, he is watching that stuff. I don't watch as much D&D streaming to be relevant, but I will absolutely drop into a Critical Role if I'm writing and I'll have it playing on one of my monitors so I can listen to it. I do that. I've been invited to play on several streams and it's been a blast. I watched the Founders and Legends thing that
yeah.
Luke Gygax does for GaryCon, and it's great. Mostly I get intimidated because those are actual actors playing games, and yeah, they're not, you know, dropping F-bombs
Yeah.
and like got stuff falling off their face and don't look bright red like a tomato, you know. It's a different perspective.
No, for sure. I actually at the last Game Con I went to, I was in the role play roulette game, and like Matthew Lillard was in that game, and I was like, that guy like was Scooby Doo and the Scream guy, like. So,
We just watched Scream right before we took off for Gamehole, and I
uh,
told uh my son and my wife, I said, okay, so you see that guy that you like in Scream? He's
yeah,
probably going to be a Gamehole at Beatles and Grimm's. And they were like, what?
yeah,
And I said, yeah, people who are in Hollywood, they've come out as D&D nerds.
yeah. It's
It's
crazy.
amazing. Yeah. And it was funny because I think the Gamehole con that you were at, I bumped into him just outside of the booth and I recognized who he was and I couldn't say anything. I was just like, oh,
It's so bizarre, right? Like when you're like,
I get that way. I get super starstruck and nervous and won't
yeah,
talk to people that are famous. Like I will literally, if I recognize somebody who's famous, I'll go, oh, and then turn around and run.
that's
I
great.
I I'm the biggest dork about that stuff. Zach
Yeah.
laughs
Oh,
just all the
the
time.
best example that I've seen of that was we in 2017 we went out to LA and filmed GM tips for Satine Phoenix at Geek and
Oh,
Sundry, and we came back when Critical Role was filming. We got to meet some of the cast and hang out and talk to Matt a little bit, and it was all cool. And then like a couple of years later, I guess it was probably the Gen Con before COVID. We were there. Ted had brought one of his Talladori book because he wanted to see if he could get the cast to sign it, and we were sitting in our hotel lobby just waiting, and like Matt and Taliesin and a couple of people walk in, and they were just getting there. So I went over to say hi, and Ted got totally starstruck and started fanboying out, and it was so funny because he's like he had met him before, but he wasn't like a fan then. Like he was
Yeah.
aware of it, and
Yeah.
like in that time between, he'd become a huge fan of the show, and watched all the episodes from the first campaign when I was getting and was watching the second one, and like he's like, I felt like such an idiot because I've talked to Matt before, and and now all of a sudden it was like someone like cast a spell on him and took his voice away like the Little Mermaid.
Yeah. At Gamehole one year, they were walking through the vendor hall, and it was when I was still working at Frog God Games. So I was behind the booth, and uh, Matt and Alex Kammer were coming around, and Matt's handler team was he was supposed to be getting somewhere, but wanted to do a loop through the vendor hall.
Yeah.
And they had paused right in front of the booth, and I reached out to shake his hand and say thank you. And the handler like shoved him and said, "Okay, we're late. We got to go." And I was like, "Whoa, just missed." So
access denied.
so I think I like threw my shoulder out and did like a, "Hey," totally, yeah, absolutely stupid maneuver. But those things happen. I somehow I wasn't at GaryCon the year Joe Manganiello was there hanging out with some of my friends, and they got pictures. And I think that would probably be the celebrity implosion that I would just be like, I'm done. I can't do this. I can't handle this. He's too cool.
So we were getting into like the last 10 minutes here, and I know there was a thing you wanted to bring up.
Yeah, I mentioned it briefly. John Peterson wrote a book called Game Wizards that talks about the whole battle between Gary Gygax and Dave Arneson of who did what for D&D and all this stuff. Really excellent book. If people are interested in the history, they should check it out. On the cover of the book, there are some painted miniatures of Dave Arneson and Gary Gygax. And my buddy Jim Wampler from Mud Puppy Games is the only licensed retailer of those miniatures. So there's I think I sent you the link for that.
You did actually. Like, I have a link to your website, and I know there's a link to it on your website.
Yeah, there is. Mud Puppy Games is where you can find these miniatures. If you just go to check it out, it's mudpuppycomics.com. And we took a bunch of the minis to Gamehole, and they sold out in 3 days. So they're really cool, really detailed, great minis. And I wanted to give Jim that shout out because they're awesome. I have 2 sets.
Nice. One for playing with and one for displaying.
Well, they're both
total Spaceball scene.
Yep, they are both painted by somebody who is extraordinarily well known in the RPG world, who didn't like how he painted them. So I don't say who it was because he hasn't given me permission to say, but his initials are TK. So that's it. That's all I'm going to say.
TK. And now there's a mystery afoot and must be solved.
Well, I'll give you another hint. First TSR employee.
Yeah, I know who it is, but
yeah. Anyway, now he's probably going to be mad at me.
Only if people can figure it out. So.
Yeah. Hey, if you're new enough to D&D, you may not know.
No, that's going back a couple years for sure.
So get John Peterson's book and then look through the book.
Yeah.
Because he is talked about in there as well. So
so you also do kind of like a talk show on YouTube with Zach Lazar as well.
Yes, goddamn it, Zach on YouTube with my buddy Zach. We talk nonsense about gaming, whatever strikes our fancy. We used to just show off toys we got from conventions or what just came out on Kickstarter. New thing that we've been doing is making videos from some of our friends who are small publishers. We run a small publisher seminar. We run seminars at conventions just to help people out that want to break into the business, really think about that if you want to break into small publishing. At Gamehole, we did a version of the small publisher seminar where we talked about the difference between being a small publisher and being a freelancer. There's a massive difference. And we were helped out in that one by a good friend, Crystal Mazer, who was in the audience as a plant and ended up being the best part of the entire seminar. So check her stuff out as well. And besides that, an offshoot of the Small Publisher Seminar has been the Independent Publishers Union, which is a group of small publishers, SGP, Mud Puppy Games, our friends at Silver Boule Games, Ian McGarty and Rocky Gardner, and Levi Combs with Planet X Games. That was a mouthful.
A little bit, a little bit. And what is it you guys do collectively?
We just kind of help support each other as small publishers. It started off, I got listed as a special guest for North Texas Con, and with that came a table that I could put my books out so I could sell. That's one of the things that they offer special guests. And I thought, well, I mean, I'm going to fill up about a third of a table. Maybe I can get my buddies who couldn't necessarily afford a table. We can put all of our stuff together and make it so it's one-stop shopping for people coming through the convention, looking at the vendors. And it did so well, we are taking it on the road. It's going to be a thing now.
Yeah, in the RPG space, I think there's at least one other outfit that kind of does that as well. That it's kind of a network you can join. And then we had friends of ours that did it in the tabletop space where they're small indie publishers that can't afford a table at Gen Con or PAX or whatever. But like, you know, if a group of them band together, you know, some of them can go and work it. Other people can send their stuff. They share the costs. It makes it, you know, a lot more manageable.
Yeah. And in light of recent events, specifically Paizo Publishing, we are union in name only.
Yeah.
We are more like a street gang or consortium. we are not at all an actual union with any kind of that going on. More power to them. If that's
we won't see you guys picketing any place anytime soon. Is that what you're trying to tell me?
Well, you might see us picketing, but it would only be like they didn't let us in the bar, you know, that kind of thing.
They cut us off. They said you had enough.
They shut us down.
Yeah.
No, that's very tongue in cheek. I'm not trying to make light of anybody's situation, but yeah, we're not a union. We are a union.
More of a conglomerate or network.
Yeah. Yeah, we're going to be one of those multi-billionaire conglomerates here real soon. Not at all.
Yeah, then you can shoot people into space. Nice.
Yeah. Well, there are definitely some people I'd love to shoot into space.
But maybe not bring them back.
Yeah, none of my buddies, though.
So Park says, that's awesome on the minis. Gygax can now be a BBEG.
Yeah, this is your opportunity to own Gary or Dave.
Yeah.
In a miniature format only, not at all any other connotations. I heard it as I said it, and that's not
You're like, wait a minute,
not what I meant. Yeah, that's not right. That's a mistake.
What's the next convention you're going to be at?
Next convention is TotalCon up in Massachusetts. That happens February 23rd through the 27th, I believe. Right in the brisk New England weather.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think I get to be a special guest there too. Going to run a bunch of Crypt of the Science Wizard level 1 and should have some information on Crypt of the Science Wizard level 2 Kickstarter at the same time.
I'm gonna have to check out TotalCon. I have not been to that one yet, and that's definitely in driving range.
Oh God, if it's in driving range, I 100% suggest it.
Yeah.
It's got this small vibe. It's got a ton of games, different stuff. A lot of uh they do some Artemis. It's this giant sci-fi space game where like you and seven of your buddies are bridge crew, and
Oh
you're all
yeah,
at
I've heard of
different
that. Yeah.
computer modules, and you can do it. I did it once. I was a communications officer, and you have never seen Star Trek with so much profanity as me as the communications officer. They would not let me have the guns. So yeah,
Yeah.
no, it's a lot of fun. And this
They
year's
network a
theme,
bunch of computers together, and you kind
yeah,
of like the computers are your station, right?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And you're all in one room and you're not facing anybody. So you just, I think you're supposed to type what you're doing to the other, like engineering or the
Mm.
captain or whatever. But we just started yelling at each other. It
Yeah,
was the
yelling sounds like a
most,
better method than typing anyway.
it was the most disorganized, awesome
Yeah.
bridge crew ever. Their theme this year is uh, classic monsters, so like Frankenstein and Dracula and Wolfman and all that
Yeah.
kind of stuff is going on. So it's a lot of fun. Last year was Saturday morning cartoons, so they had breakfast cereals and stuff all over the place. It's a lot of fun. They do a really good convention.
Yeah. So we're in New Jersey, so that's definitely
Oh yeah,
driving instead of flying.
yeah. I'm in Seattle, so
Oh, not so much. Yeah.
it's a trek.
For sure. So, we are up on the hour mark. Final thoughts before we head on out.
Play some games, have some fun. Don't take this stuff so seriously. It's so serious.
That is good advice. Thanks for coming on. Really appreciate it. Remember, folks, down in the description you find those links. Go click and follow. And until next time, stay nerdy.